Welcome back, guys. I'm so excited to be back with you. It's been a long time. I want to explain a couple things before we get started. I shut the weekly live stream down this summer for a couple of reasons. The first reason is summers in Vancouver, where I live, have become extremely hot, and I can't air condition my home studio. What this means is it's really uncomfortable for me because I have studio lights in here. It's also a little bit dangerous for all my camera equipment and computer stuff. So I shut it down for the climate reasons. Another reason is I took a job teaching at a summer school program, and it took up a lot of my time, so I couldn't really, focus on other things like my video projects. However, the program was fantastic. I met a lot of amazing students from Brazil. You know who you are, and if you're watching, hello guys, and thank you for such a wonderful experience. And the third reason I took a break from the show was I felt it was time to adjust the format a little. I began streaming this show in 2020 during the pandemic as a way of staying connected to language learners around the world. I didn't realize at the beginning what sort of show it would grow into. So I wanted to take some time and really think about it and consider the things that worked well, consider the things that didn't work well, and consider what viewers liked about the show and wanted from me, and mostly what I can provide my learners. So I wanted to readjust the whole branding, the focus, and the focus I decided on was to focus on English grammar for a couple of reasons. One, I like it. Two, there's a lot of conversation about grammar these days, whether or not we should learn it, how to teach it, and whether or not it's important for people to learn grammar. I happen to believe grammar is very important. I happen to believe that we should teach it and that we should learn it. Now, of course, the ways of learning grammar are always changing and evolving, and that's up to teachers to continue to push, myself included. But I do believe it's important because grammar is the structure of meaning. And if we don't have a variety of grammar structures to use, we can't communicate in a variety of meanings. And that's important. We want to exactly match as best we can the meanings in our mind with the meanings that we communicate. And grammar is essential for doing that. What else? I also wanted this show to be a little bit more interactive. The show will now focus each week on one single grammar question. This question will be asked of me by a viewer or a learner. And what I'd really like to do is have you guys send me video clips of asking questions. Because one single little question, it might seem simple, but it can actually grow into a larger discussion. And we have a great question tonight. I just want to check something here, guys. I want to be able to say hello to everyone. We have Wako with us from Japan. Long time no see, Wako. Welcome to the show. Wherever you are, guys, say hello in the comment threads and tell us where you're from. It's always great to get a sense of the viewership around the world. What else can I tell you? We have a great question to focus on tonight, a great English mystery. We'll get to that shortly. So this is the format of the show. We'll start by saying hello to everyone. As usual, I want to get to know everyone, see who's watching, see who's got some questions. Then we'll proceed with the question or English mystery of the week. Okay? We'll investigate it, we'll explore it, we'll break it down, we'll analyze it. Why? Because I want you to better understand English grammar so that you can use it more precisely to express the meanings that you want to express. I don't care about tests and scores and quizzes. I'm not going to teach you grammar and ask you to follow it. What I want to do is show you how to understand grammar better so that you can express more accurately with it. And I believe that's essential. And after that, we'll have lots of time for questions. But what I want to do is really focus each show around one grammar question. Sounds simple, but as you'll see tonight, a single simple question often explodes into larger questions. So if you just allow me a moment, guys, let me switch over here and see who's with us. Oh, we have Kyra Kira Sage with us on LinkedIn. Great. Welcome to the show. Great to see you here. We have Wako from Japan. Who else is with us? If you're with us, guys, say hello. We have Karen. Karen's with us. She's in South Korea right now, I believe, although originally from the USA. Welcome to the show, Karen. Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, guys, please say hello. Let me get a sense of where everyone is watching, and then we'll get to our mystery. And again, tonight we have a really great question that was sent in. So who else is watching? It's been a long time since we did this, so forgive me if I'm a little rusty. Who else do we have with us? By the way, guys, how's the sound? Can you hear me clear enough? Is it too high, too low, just right? Let me know. Oh, excited for the show. Thank you. I hope it's a good show. I hope I won't disappoint you. And by the way, a couple of you watching will be future guests of the show if all goes well, and I hope you'll join me on the show. Tonight we don't have a guest. I want to kick off with an in-depth investigation. Great, thank you. Oh, Stacy's with us. Stacy's in South Korea also. Great to have you with us. Who else is with us? If you're just joining the show, guys, please say hello. And let me know how things are where you are. Again, after our exploration of the grammar mystery of the week, there'll be time for questions about that. What I'd like you to do if you have questions about a different topic is connect with me on social media. You'll find all of my links down below. And send me your question. It would be great if you sent it in the form of a video, as you'll see tonight. That way we can share the question the way you wondered it. So start thinking about your English mysteries and make a little video clip. You know, something like 30 seconds long at the most. You'll see an example of it tonight. And send it to me on social media, and I'll use it on the show. I really felt like in the past, viewers ask a lot of great questions, but we might have 5 or 6 questions about 5 or 6 different topics each show, and I found myself rushing through the analysis of each question. And as I said, a simple question can explode into a larger explanation. It needs some time. So even a simple question, you know, can take up a whole show. So that's why I wanted to focus each show around a single question. Okay, well, we're almost at the 10-minute mark. Okay, let's get rid of the chat overlay. And let's get ready to go on with the show. So again, I want to know what your English mysteries are. I want you to send me those questions on social media rather than in the captions. Tonight we'll have questions about tonight's topic after our little investigation. Now, before we get started, you know, some people have asked me, hey teacher, what's with all this detective stuff? Well, in the past, I've worked as a private investigator, and I really enjoyed some of the investigative techniques I learned in that business, such as inquiry and how to analyze information. And I thought it'd be fun to sort of play a detective on this show, because I found over time as an English teacher, when I taught grammar, if you will, I would usually start with the example and then pull out of the example the framework or the form and meaning of a single example. And this is really inductive methodology. The opposite would be deductive, which is when a teacher shows you the structure of a certain grammar and then takes it to an example. I work the other way around. I start with the example. And I found a lot of success with that teaching method, and I thought it's kind of like detective work. Actually, those of you familiar with Sherlock Holmes, the author of the Sherlock Holmes books originally said that Sherlock would say it's deduction, how he solved the mystery. But in fact, the author of the book got it wrong. It's not deduction he used. He used induction, which is what I use, because he started with real life evidence, the example of the crime, and from it he deduced the structure of the crime, who the guilty person was, their motive, and so on. So a lot of people picked up on that because those movies and books influenced a lot of people, and this idea of deductive logic grew, but it's actually wrong, right? When we start with an example, that's inductive, and that's what Sherlock Holmes did, and that's what I do. So that's the grammar detective stuff. Oh, we also have tonight with us Facebook user from Japan. Welcome to the show. Great to have you with us. We also have Berta from Colombia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Great to have you with us. Wako says, I like your new outfit. Well, thank you very much. It's sort of the old detective costume. I thought I should wear a recognizable uniform so that every show I look the same. It also helps me because I don't have to think about my wardrobe and choose it and select it, and I can wear the same thing every week. We have Wilson with us, and Wilson is from Peru. Oh, no, sorry. Wilson's from Ecuador. Gosh, it's been so long, Wilson. I'm sorry. Ecuador. Great. Okay, guys, we're going to get started. I'm going to introduce today's English mystery. So, give me a moment to get to the things. So today's English mystery, guys, pay attention because this is the question the whole show is going to explain. So here we go. Are you ready?
Hi, Teacher Paul. When I order coffee, can I say what would be your lightest or darkest coffee here, or what could you be your lightest or darkest coffee here?
What would be
your lightest coffee here? Why can't I say what could you?
Okay, this is a great question. First, I want to say thank you to the student named Diomi. She's working in Toronto with my friend Anish Daya of On the Spot Language, a great educational program. Anish has been a friend and guest of the show several times. Hopefully he'll join us another day. But his student sent this question. I think it's a really good question. So let me just summarize here with a little bit of graphic. So I'm going to simplify the sentences just so we can really clearly see the grammar that's at work here. So Diomi is asking, basically, which of the two sentences is more correct or accurate? I prefer to say accurate because correct implies there's a perfect way to say something and a not perfect way to say something. And I don't agree with that. I think accuracy is more appropriate because with any communication, any grammar, any sentence, what are we trying to do? We're trying to communicate an idea we have in our mind. And so what we want is that expression to accurately match our idea, okay? So she's essentially asking which of these two sentences, sorry guys, what would be your lightest coffee here? Or what could be your lightest coffee here? She's asking which one is the most accurate. And I think she's under the impression that she's not supposed to say this, she's supposed to say this. So there's more of a, maybe this is a commonly held expression. So most people would say this, fewer people would say this. She wants to know why. She wants to know why this is good and this is not good. Okay? And we're going to break this down. Gosh, I see some paper here. Sorry, guys. A little out of touch, a little rusty. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Well, what I want to point out is the key difference here. The key difference to start with is this word and this word. And some of you may know what kind of words these are. These are modals or modal verbs. What do modals do? Well, they adjust the meaning of the verb. They come before the base form of a verb or bare infinitive, whatever you want to call it, and they adjust the meaning of it a bit. They modulate it, right? They change the mode of that verb, right? Now the verb stays base form, but the meaning is, the mode of that meaning, the angle of that meaning is slightly changed, okay? And you know other modals like should, can, shall, ought to, had better, lots of different modals. Will, all right? We have Chris Derboven from Belgium. Great. She's joined us. Welcome. Welcome, Chris. Long time no see. So what we're looking at here is which one's the better sentence, which one's more accurate, okay? And is one of them wrong? Ryomi, who asked this question, is asking, maybe this one's wrong, and if so, why is it wrong, okay? So I want you to pay attention to these two key words because that's the difference between these two sentences, okay? So before we go any further, what I'd like to do is take a very close look at these two words and what they mean, okay? So I've prepared some definitions here. Would, what the hell does would mean? Oh, actually, Wilson's got a good question here. Let's pause for a moment. Wilson. Sorry, Wilson. Where are you? So Wilson's asking, what does it mean lightest? So when you roast coffee, right, you start with the coffee bean and you roast it in a big metal container. And depending how much you roast it, it affects the caffeine content and the color of the bean. So a light roast means you don't roast it very much, just a little bit, and the bean retains a very light blonde color. It also keeps more caffeine intact. Darker roasts, longer roasts make the bean darker, and you end up with a less caffeinated bean, but it's ideal for flavorful drinks like espresso. Okay? But let's focus on the grammar, guys. This is not a coffee lesson. Okay, so let's define the two modals that are interacting here. The first one is would. Wood's a modal that means, well, it's the past form of will. I don't like to say past tense, as some textbooks do, because it's a bit misleading. It's the verb that expresses tense, right? The main verb of a sentence expresses tense. It's not really the job of the modal. However, the modal would is the past form of will. But what does will mean? Well, will expresses an expectation, right? Tomorrow it will rain. I think so. That's an expectation. It also expresses an intention, a strong desire. I will go to the store tomorrow. I will do that. It will happen. Or belief in an action to happen. Okay, for example, tomorrow I will have lunch. I believe that will happen. Okay? So, in summary, would is a very strong idea that something happens. Okay? Something will happen, something I want to happen, or something I strongly believe will happen. Okay? We use it to point to the future, and the idea also can be expressed in the past with would. These are the basic ideas. These are just definitions. We haven't gotten to conditionals yet. Okay? The other modal here is could. Could is the past form of can. So what does can express? Can expresses the ability of an action to happen. That's it. Okay? Can expresses ability. Now some people have been taught can and could express possibility. Well, possibility and ability kind of work together, right? If you have the ability to do something, it becomes possible to do it, right? For example, I have a camera. I have a computer. Because of those tools, I can do this live stream. I have the ability to do this live stream. It doesn't mean I will. As you know, I shut down for the summer. All it means is the camera and the computer allow me the ability to do something, to stream this show. Okay? That's all it expresses. It doesn't mean that I want to. It doesn't mean that it will happen. It just means ability. And of course, if you have the ability, it is possible that it might happen. But that's the limit of the meaning. That's all it expresses, okay? Would and could. Now, how do we use them? Well, I want to say something here that might be a little controversial. It might even be, some people disagree with it, but I will attempt to prove it and hopefully persuade you to accept it. We're going to address Ryomi's question about which of these sentences is most accurate. In order to do that, we have to talk about a very, very complex, confusing, but very important grammar structure called conditionals. Oops, sorry guys, wrong graphic. Here we go. Conditionals, right? Some of you have learned conditionals. Some of you have learned them, don't understand them, so you avoid them. Others are very comfortable with them, okay? I'm going to break them down, and then I'm going to show you how Ryomi's question is related to conditionals, all right? So what are we talking about when we talk about conditionals? Conditionals are quite simply a complex sentence with a dependent clause and an independent clause, okay? So they're complex sentences. That alone makes them confusing. Students and learners often struggle with complexity. It's easy to say, I am Paul. It's a little more complex to say, I am Paul because my parents named me Paul, right? A because. But we're not exactly dealing with cause and effect here. We are dealing with condition and result. So let's think about what that means, because that's the relationship of conditionals. Conditionals express a relationship between a condition and a result. Why do we need that? Let's think about it. Well, humans are very complicated creatures. We have powerful brains, okay? We can think about things that are happening in our reality right now. We can think about things that happened in the past because we have memories. We also have imaginations, so we can imagine things that happen in the future, right? We can even imagine things that can't possibly exist. Fantasies, right? The world is full of great movies and novels and stories that are creations of fantasy, right? We can imagine these things. We have powerful brains, much more powerful than, say, a rabbit's brain. A rabbit looks around and thinks, where's my carrot or my lettuce, whatever they eat, right? They're looking for food constantly. They're always in the present. In that way, they're kind of zen. But a rabbit doesn't remember what it ate last week, right? It might remember where the food was, but has very, very simplified memory ability, okay? Does it think about its future? Probably not, right? It probably doesn't think what will happen tomorrow. It's concerned with eating food now. Unlike the rabbit, humans are very capable of thinking both in the past and the future, and hypothetical situations, situations that may be impossible to exist. So, this is where conditionals come in. A condition is a set of circumstances or a situation, right? Or an action that happens, and the condition can be in the past, it can be in the present, it can be in the future. It can even be an imaginary condition, a hypothetical condition, okay? And that particular condition leads to a particular result, right? This is human reality, and language expresses our reality. So we need this, and this is conditional structure. The condition is your dependent clause, okay? It can't be alone. It depends on the independent clause, okay? And by the way, because the relationships, like all other sentences, complex sentences with a dependent clause and an independent clause, they can switch. So we can do things like, where is it now? Sorry guys, I can't find my cursor. Yeah, we can switch them, right? We can start the sentence with the result and finish with the condition. Okay. I'm going to give you some examples of conditions and results. And there are basically 4 types of conditional sentences, okay? 4 types. 4 basic structures, okay? Sometimes students are taught 3 basic structures. One, however, is a little different and it's worth distinguishing, okay? The first one, Let me give you an example. We're going to call this first conditional. Actually, no. Let's start with the other one. Let's start with something called zero conditional. Where's my... Oh, sorry guys, I'm going to switch back the graphic. I like starting with the condition. Yep. Okay. So in first conditional, where are we here? Let's start with zero. Okay, what does a zero conditional mean? Zero conditional expresses a general fact, often a scientific fact, but it can also be sort of a localized fact, like your fact, your truth. Okay? I'll give you an example here. If it rains, right? The rivers rise. Okay? If it rains, the rivers rise. Oh, sorry. A little too high. Let me bring that down, guys. Sorry. Getting used to the board all over again. If it rains, the rivers rise. Better? Okay, good. So this is the condition. If that happens, this happens. How often? Well, we're talking about a zero conditional expresses... Okay, it's too high. So I'm going to just erase this graphic, guys. Okay, so zero conditional. If it rains, the rivers rise. Is this true in one specific situation? No. This is always true, right? Every time it rains, the rivers rise, a little bit at least. It's a scientific truth. It's a geographic truth. Okay? Let's give another example. If water reaches 0 degrees, it boils, freezes. Right? If water reaches 0 degrees, it freezes. Let's put a comma here because we are writing. If water reaches 0 degrees, it freezes. Sometimes? No. All the time. It's a generalized fact. And how do we make this zero conditional? We use simple present. Right? Why? Because simple present is used to express habits, routines, or general facts. Right? Every day I eat lunch. That's my habit. I use simple present. So to express a general truth with a condition and a result, simple present. Okay, this is where it starts to get a little weird. What is a first conditional, right? What's a first conditional? Well, first conditional is a little bit different. It refers to a specific condition and a specific result, often in the near future. For example, if it rains tonight, right? Tonight is a specific future, today's night. I will wear a hat, right? If it rains tonight, simple present, I will wear a hat. And what do we have here? We have base form and a modal will. This is the future. If this happens, this will happen, right? This will really happen. In fact, we should say that. It's real. These are real truths. These are real relationships between this condition and this result, okay? When this happens, this happens. I'll give you another example. If I win $1 million, I'll just shorten this sentence here, in the lottery tonight, running out of board, guys. If I win $1 million in the lottery tonight, every Friday in my province, we have a lottery. If I win $1 million in the lottery tonight, what will happen? Well, I will purchase a number of things, but one thing I will purchase is a Ferrari. I'll buy my wife a home too, but got to put a Ferrari in that garage. And again, we have simple present, we have the modal will, and we have the base form verb. So if this happens tonight in this specific condition, specific situation, this will definitely happen. It really will happen. Okay? Why? Because I have a strong intention for it to happen. Remember, will or would expresses intention or the prediction or expectation something will happen. This will happen, really. So far, so good. It's about to get weird. Okay? Let's get weird. And by the way, guys, I apologize. While I'm doing this, I'm not paying much attention to the comments, so I'll catch up with you towards the end. Okay. We have zero, we have second. Sorry, we have zero, we have first. Now it's time to talk about second conditional. Remember I told you that humans are able, unlike the rabbits, to think about past, present, and future quite accurately. We've talked about a general present. We've talked about a condition in the present and a specific future. Now it's time to talk about, and by the way, these are real. These really will happen. Now it's time to talk about hypothetical situations or unreal situations. Hypothetical. Situations that we can imagine being possible. They possibly could happen, but maybe they don't, right? But we can imagine them. And the first one, there are two that are unreal or hypothetical. Or some textbooks say contrary to the fact. Okay, there are two structures, one for the present and one for the past, right? Because this is the one we use to predict the future. But now we're going to talk about the present, but not a present that's possible or real. Not a thing that's really going to happen. Okay, second conditional, and this gets confusing because we're going to use verb forms that might seem counterintuitive. Okay, let's look at the first one. Sorry guys, I'm going to get my marker sorted out here. If it rained in the summer, comma, right? I would wear a hat. Okay? If it rained in the summer, I would wear a hat. And look at the verbs. We're using the past tense form of the verb. Here we have base form and we have the modal would. Right? Let's look at the sentence and the idea behind it. If it rained in the summer, I would wear a hat. I've got news for you. Where I live, it doesn't rain in the summer. It rains the rest of the year, but it does not rain in the summer. So this is not true. Okay? This is not reality. This is unreal. Okay? Because it does not rain in the summer. Now or in the past, it doesn't. Okay? Well, it's not entirely true. It might have a sprinkle now and again, but generally it does not rain in the summer. But if it rained in the summer, which it doesn't, what would I do? What would be the result? Well, the result would be I would wear a hat. Okay? But guess what? The meaning of this sentence is it doesn't rain in the summer, so I don't wear a hat. This is not real either. But I can imagine it. I can imagine my normally dry city suddenly getting pouring rain in the summer. I can picture that. I can imagine it. And if I can imagine it, I need a grammar to express it. That's zero conditional. Now be careful. We're using the past tense verb, but the meaning is not the past. The meaning is present. And that's where everyone gets confused. Let's try another example. If I had $1 million, comma, as you can imagine, I would buy a Ferrari. Okay, and look at the verbs. Past tense of had, of have. We have the base form buy and the modal would. Now, what's the meaning of this? Well, the meaning is, if I had $1 million in my pocket, which I don't, what would be happening? What would be the truth? Well, I would buy a Ferrari. In this condition, that would be the result. But guess what? This is not happening right now. This is not reality. It's unreal. It's hypothetical. I can imagine it, but it's not real. Because I can imagine it, I need this grammar to be able to express it to you. This is my dream. If I had $1 million in my pocket right now, not in the past, right now, this is what I would do. But it's just hypothetical, right? It's not real. Now, great question here is, can we also use could? I was getting to this because it's part of our question. It's possible, right? Because having $1 million leads to my ability to buy a Ferrari, right? It means I have the ability. So you have a choice here, but the meaning is different. If I say I could buy a Ferrari, what am I telling you? I'm just telling you the ability would be there. I'm not telling you what my plan is, right? If I had $1 million, I could buy a Ferrari, I could buy a boat, I could buy a house, I could buy a lot of things. So when I say I could buy a Ferrari, all I'm talking about is ability. I'm not telling you what the plan or intention is. If you want to express intention, your strong desire, what you will do, you have to use would. Grammatically, though, this becomes possible because this ability, this condition, gives this ability. Okay? Let's take a step back. Could we say it in the second conditional? Could we use can? If I win $1 million in the lottery tonight, I can buy a Ferrari. Yes, it works grammatically. It does offer a different meaning, though. It means I'll have the ability. But if I win $1 million tonight, it's also true that I can buy a house, I can buy a boat, I can buy another suit. It means a lot of things are possible. So if you want to tell people what's possible, yeah, go ahead, use can. I can buy a Ferrari, I can buy a house, I can buy a boat. But if you want to specifically tell them what will happen because of your intention, right, then you have to say will. Okay? And up here we don't want to use can, right? Because this is a general truth. It's about what always happens, not what's possible or what's able to happen. Okay, so we've talked about second conditional, which points to the present, not the past, even though we're using a past tense verb. And remember, second conditional is unreal. It's telling us about an imaginary, hypothetical situation. If it rained in the summer, it doesn't. If I had $1 million, trust me, I don't. Okay, this is the present, and it's unreal. Now we have to talk about the past, which is unreal. Why is the past unreal? Why can't we say the past is always true, or the past will be true tonight? Well, it's quite simple, guys. Past is finished. It's past. The past, although it affects the present, the past doesn't exist. Not anymore. Okay? So, let's look at a couple of examples. And by the way, these are all related to Yomi's question, which we're going to get to, so stay tuned. But we have to review conditionals to understand what her question was. Okay, third conditional, guys. Remember, this is in the unreal category, but it's talking about the past, because this one isn't. Okay, if it had rained, when? Well, in the past. Yesterday. What would have been true? Well, I would have worn a hat. Right? And look at the verbs. We have past perfect, which is basically two pasts. Over here, we have present perfect in the result. Okay? Plus the modal would. Why do we need would? It's the past form of will. Okay? And yes, we can use could too. But remember, could just expresses ability. It doesn't tell us what happened or what would have happened. It just expresses an ability or possibility. Okay, if it had rained yesterday, which it didn't, but if it had, what would have been true? I would have worn a hat. But it didn't rain yesterday, it was hot and sunny. So I didn't wear a hat. This never happened. It's unreal. But I can imagine it. I can imagine this situation, and therefore I can express it to you. I can share it with you. I can share with you what would have happened if this had been different, right? And we can use this structure to express regrets. When I was a child, if I had studied more, my grades would have been higher, right? I regret that. It never happened. I didn't study more, so my grades were not higher. They were pretty low. Let's look at another example. If I had won $1 million in, let's say, yesterday's lottery, the lottery was yesterday, past, I would have, as you know, bought a Ferrari. Right? Because the money gives me the ability. So if I just want to emphasize the ability, yeah, I can use could. And again, we have past perfect in the condition. We have present perfect in the result with the modals would and could. And again, the difference is I really would have bought a Ferrari. That would have been my intention. That was my dream. That was my plan. It would have happened. Could just expresses that the money would give me the ability. Right? I could also buy a house. I could also buy a boat. That wasn't my plan, but it's my ability. Right? I could also take $1 million and throw it in the river. Having $1 million gives me the ability to throw it in the river. Would I do that? No. Probably not. Okay. So look, if I had won $1 million in yesterday's lottery, but I didn't. This is unreal. Never happened. But if I had won $1 million, this would have happened. I would have bought a Ferrari and a house for my wife and so on. I would have bought a Ferrari. Because this never happened, this never happened. This is unreal. Now we have all four conditionals in front of us. What I want to point out, guys, is a little piece, a little word that will connect us back to Ryomi's question. What do you notice if I draw a line here? If I draw a line between the top two and the bottom two, the 0 and the first conditional, these are real. These really happen, right? If water reaches 0, it freezes. All the time, scientific fact. If it rains tonight, I will wear a hat. I promise you that's going to happen, right? If it rains. If I win $1 million in lottery tonight, I promise you I will buy a Ferrari and a house for my wife. Don't worry, right? These ones are not real. These are imaginary possibilities. These are hypothetical expressions of things that I can imagine being real, but they're not, right? If it rained in the summer, which it doesn't, I would wear a hat, but I don't wear a hat. If I had $1 million, I would buy a Ferrari, but I don't have $1 million right now, so I'm not buying a Ferrari. And if it had rained yesterday, which it didn't, it was sunny, I would have worn a hat. I could have worn a hat, but it didn't, so I didn't. If I had won $1 million in yesterday's lottery, I would have bought a Ferrari. I could have bought a Ferrari, but I would have. But I didn't win the lottery, so there's no Ferrari in my driveway. Those are the four conditionals. But what is it that distinguishes these and these? Well, look closely. Would, would could, would could, would could. When we're expressing something unreal, we use those modals. right? We use those modals. They mean something unreal. And here's my bold claim that a lot of people will disagree with, but I will prove. I believe that all examples of using would and could, all variations of conditionals, and there are a lot, there's a lot of different ways to twist and turn these four conditionals. These are the four basics, but we can use them in all kinds of different expressions. But I want you to understand that I believe that all the variations of conditional expressions, all of them, and there are a lot, we can switch them, we can mix them. There are abbreviated conditionals, there are imperative conditionals, right? You can tell someone to do something. I'm just asking a question here about mixed conditionals. Yeah, these are all different variations of conditionals. All of them are rooted in the four basics. So if you want to understand all the variations, right? All the mixing, right? You can mix these things differently because things in the past affect our present. That's reality. And real things in the past sometimes affect imaginary things in the future and the present. Okay, so we can mix. Those are variations on conditionals. There's a lot of other variations too that don't look like conditionals. I'm here to tell you they're using the logic of conditionals. They're using the basic grammar. So it's really important to understand the four basics. If you master the four basic conditionals, guys, you will master a whole bunch of other expressions in English, and I'll give you a couple examples. Furthermore, down here we have would and could in the unreal section. So what I want to tell you is this. Not only are the four basic conditionals responsible for all the variations of conditionals, that seems obvious, but the four basic conditionals are also responsible for all uses of would and could. All the different ways we use would and could in English, they're all rooted in the four basic conditionals. So you have to understand these. So what are the different uses? Well, we can make suggestions like, hey, what do you want to do on Friday? Well, we could watch a movie. That's a conditional. What's the rest of the sentence? Well, we could watch a movie if you want, right? We use it to make predictions. Well, it could rain tomorrow if the conditions are right, if the clouds continue. It could rain tomorrow, right? Polite requests. Would you mind opening the door? That's the result. That's a hypothetical result. Would you mind opening the door? If it's convenient for you, right? Or if you opened the door, would you be upset? If you opened the door, would you mind? So we can collapse that full conditional into a simpler expression, would you mind opening the door? It creates a polite expression because you're giving the other person the power to say, no, I don't have that condition, right? So for example, could you help me move on the weekend? That's a polite request, but it's really a conditional. What you're really saying is, if you are able, if you are available, could you help me move, right? And that's polite because you give the other person the opportunity to say, no, I don't have that ability. I have to work. Past habits. When I was a child visiting grandma's house, I would play in her garden. I would play in her garden. But only if or when I was at grandma's house. In that condition, this is what I would do, right? What I'm here to tell you is that all the uses of would and could are rooted in the basic conditionals. So you have to understand conditionals because there are so many ways to use would and could in English, but they all come from the four basic conditionals that we have here, okay? Now, if you want, I have a document, like a reminder chart, that I can forward to you. Just contact me on social media and I'll give you this document. Okay, where does that leave us? Well, let's take a break. Let me get a little water in and then I'll press forward. So now we understand about the four conditionals. I'm just going to clear the board. Maybe I don't need to. Yeah, let's leave it up. We understand about the 4 basic conditionals, but what we want to do now is connect them to Ryomi's question, right? And just to remind you, her question was, what would be your lightest coffee here, or what could be your lightest coffee here? I think it was at the 10-minute mark, I played the video of her question. She's in a coffee shop or a cafe, and she wants to know which is the right sentence to ask for coffee. And she wants a light coffee, a light roast, right? The flavor is light, it's not very strong. It's not like espresso with a bitter, strong taste. And it has a lot of caffeine. That's a light roast. Okay. How is this connected to conditionals? Well, I told you that would and could, all uses of would and could, are connected to conditionals, right? That's my claim. So if that's true, her question here is related to conditionals. Now it's time to show you how. The question she's asking, let's extend her question into, well, let's see what we can do here. Let's go to her question. Right, okay. Let's look at this in terms of the 4 conditionals that we have on the board, right? What would be an answer if she asked those questions to the cafe? What would be your lightest roast coffee here? So that is the result that she's asking about. What's the implied condition? Well, the condition would be if the cafe sold light roasts. She's not sure they do, right? She doesn't know the condition, or she can assume the condition, right? So what would be your lightest roast coffee here is a question that's really asking, if you sold light roasts, what would be? And a possible answer might be like this. If we sold light roast coffees here, it would be Yukon roast. Okay, just using Yukon roast as an example. That's a typical light blend. Okay? And this grammar would be second conditional, right? But second conditional is unreal. So this basically means we don't sell light roasts. So Yukon isn't our light roasts. Okay. What if she said, what could be your lightest roast coffee here? Again, the implied condition is if you sold light roasts. She doesn't have to say it. Why doesn't she say it? Well, she's in a cafe. She assumes that a cafe sells light and dark roast coffees. So she's assuming it. She's also asking a polite question, so it gives the other person the opportunity to say, I'm sorry, we don't sell light roasts here. So there is none. There are none. Right? So, but what would a possible answer be? Well, it might be something like this. If we sold light roast coffees here, it could be Yukon roast. But this is second conditional because of the verb and the use of could and would. Could and would down here are only used in unreal hypothetical situations. So this really means, but we don't sell light roasts, so it cannot be Yukon roast. Now that's probably confusing you further. Let me put Ryomi's questions in the context of the 4 conditionals so we can compare them. Okay. Let's turn them into positive statements instead of questions. Okay? The first one, 0 conditional. This is true for all cases. So let's talk about all cafes, not the specific one she's in. So if cafes sell light roast, it is Yukon roast. So this is explaining a general fact or truth, right? If all cafes sell light roast, if any cafes sell light roast, it's always Yukon roast. Now that's not really true, but for the sake of grammar, let's say it is. Does that fit her meaning? Not quite. What about first conditional? If the specific cafe she's in, if the cafe sells light roast coffee today, it will be Yukon roast. Okay, these aren't questions that she's asking. These are the same conditionals put into structures of statement. Second conditional. If the cafe sold light roast coffee today, it would be Yukon roast. Definitely, that would be true. But it's a second conditional, which means the cafe doesn't sell light roast coffee today, so it will not be Yukon roast. But if it did, it would be Yukon roast. That would actually be the result. Third conditional. If the cafe had sold light roast coffee yesterday, it would have been Yukon roast. But it didn't sell light roast coffee yesterday, so it was not Yukon roast. So, if Ryomi's question is structured like any of these four, it looks like her question is structured like a second conditional, right? It has would. Let's go back and look at it. It has would, right? And it has the base form be, not past perfect, not present perfect, so it's not third conditional. It looks like it's second conditional. Okay. Let's look at that again. These are the four structures possible in statement variety. Now let's look at with could, because it'll start to look a little different. Remember what would means. Would means that's the truth. That's the intention. So if it sold light roast today, it would definitely be Yukon roast, right? It's very certain. Could is not certain. Could expresses ability only. So let's look at how that would look. If cafes sell light roast coffee, it is Yukon roast all the time. First conditional. If the cafe sells light roast coffee today, it will be Yukon roast. You could also say it can be Yukon roast, but if we say can be, that just tells us ability. Look at the second conditional. If the cafe sold light roast coffee today, it could be Yukon roast. That's not very clear or certain or definite. That sounds like it could also be blonde roast, Christmas roast. It could be a whole bunch of different. When you say it could be Yukon roast, it only means that it's able to be Yukon roast. It doesn't mean it is. It just means it's able or possible. So that's not very certain, right? And why is she asking the cafe if she doesn't want certainty? And again, if it's third conditional, if the cafe had sold light roast coffee yesterday, it could have been Yukon. Okay, but we're not talking about yesterday, we're talking about today. So I think the one conditional that really relates to what Ryomi's question is second conditional. Talks about the present, but an unreal present. Okay. Let me just adjust something here, guys. So, where does this leave Ryomi's question? Oops. Her question was, what would be your lightest roast coffee here? If you sold light roasts, which you may not, I don't know. I'm in the cafe, I want to order a coffee. I like light roast coffees. Ryomi likes light roast coffee. She doesn't want a strong, bitter taste. So she wants to know the name of the light roast the cafe sells. Their answer would be, if we sold light roast coffees here, it would be Yukon roasts. But remember, if you use second conditional, it's not real. So why would the cafe say that? Why would they answer like that? So, in my opinion, this question's a little weird, right? Because you're using second conditional to talk about what would be possible if you sold light roast coffees here. Well, doesn't a cafe sell light roast coffees? Right? So this makes the condition and the result not very certain. In fact, it makes it unreal. You don't want an unreal answer to that question. You want to know the name of the coffee that they sell. You want a definitive answer, a clear answer, a certain answer. If you ask the question, what could be your lightest roast coffee here if you sold light roasts, you're only asking about the ability. And that's even less certain, right? If we sold light roast coffees here, it could be Yukon roast, it could also be blonde roast, could also be Christmas roast, it could also mean, it could also be Toronto roast. It could be a lot of things, right? If we sold light roast coffees, it could be a whole bunch of possibilities. Well, that's not why you're asking the question. Ryomi's asking the question at the cafe because she wants to know what is available. She wants a name. She wants certainty because she's trying to order a coffee. She doesn't want unreal. We don't sell light roast, so it's not Yukon. So, in answer to her original question, which one of these is accurate? Which one of these is quote unquote correct? I don't care for that word. Well, in my investigation, it looks like both of them have problems. What would be your lightest roast coffee here if you sold lightest roast coffee? If you sold light roast coffee? What would be your lightest roast coffee here? Well, what would the answer be? The possible answer is, well, Yukon roast would be our lightest roast coffee here if we sold light roast coffees. But you're using second conditional, so it means you don't sell light roast. So this makes no sense. Furthermore, what could be your lightest roast coffee here if you sold light roast coffee here, right? Well, what possible answer can the cafe staff give you? They might say, well, if we sold light roast coffees here, which we don't, Yukon, it could be Yukon roast. But we don't sell light roast coffees here, so it's not Yukon roast. Well, that doesn't answer her question. Now she doesn't know what kind of coffee she should buy because they don't exist. Both of these are second conditional, which means not real, right? Unreal, hypothetical. If I had $1 million, I would buy a Ferrari, but I don't have $1 million, so there's no Ferrari. I can't buy a Ferrari. So this one's uncertain because it's not real. And this one's even more uncertain because it's not only not real, it's also only addressing ability, not what is true. If you say, I can buy a Ferrari, it doesn't mean you're going to. It doesn't mean that result will happen. It just means you have the ability. Can and could are very uncertain, right? There's even a video I've made about using could to talk about past actions that really happened. Like, last week, I could meet my friends. Okay, so you're telling me you had the ability, but you're not telling me if you met your friends or not. It's unclear. It's ambiguous, right? So, if I go to a cafe, or if Naomi goes to the cafe, what should she really ask? Well, what is she really wondering? She's wondering what light roast is actually available. Not unreal available, what's really available. So I think a better answer is this. What is your lightest roast coffee? What is? Right? This is not a conditional. It's a basic question. What is your lightest roast coffee here? I want to know what exists. I want to know what's real. I don't care about conditions if I go to a cafe. I want a coffee. All I want is the fact. What is your lightest roast coffee here? So what answer would they give me? Well, they would say, our lightest is Yukon. Our lightest roast is Yukon. That's a fact. So question and statement are probably the more clear, accurate way to ask this question. This question creates a lot of ambiguity, and it's a conditional that you don't really need to use. Okay? What is your lightest roast coffee here? What is your lightest roast coffee here? What possible answer are they going to give you? They're probably going to say, oh, Yukon is our lightest. Or maybe they'll say, we don't sell light roast coffee here. We only sell dark espresso. That's a possible answer. Anything wrong with that? No, I'd accept that. I'd say, okay, well, I like light roast coffee, so I'm going to go elsewhere. Thank you. The reason we use would and could for questions is to give the listener a chance to tell us the condition doesn't exist. But I think this is structured not that well. It's better to structure it like, first of all, you could say, do you have light roast coffee here? And then they can say, yes, Yukon. I'll have one of those, right? But even if you say, what is your lightest roast coffee? They're going to tell you the answer. You're going to get the answer you want. You're going to get the name of the roast. You're going to get the name of the coffee. What is your lightest roast coffee here? Yukon roast. So I think that is a better answer. And in fact, because you're in the cafe with the staff, you don't even need to word here. You could just say something like, what is the lightest roast coffee that you sell or have? Or simpler, what is your lightest roast coffee? In both cases, they're going to give you the answer, well, Yukon roast is our lightest, right? So, in the end, I think Ryomi's question about which one's better, I think they both have problems. I think they're both problematic. They create an uncertainty, an ambiguity that's not very helpful for the staff, especially if the staff uses English as their second language. These could be very confusing, right? It's much simpler, more direct, and probably more accurate to say, what is your lightest coffee here? Or darkest, if that's what you're after. What is? Just use a basic question structure. What is? Right? Because what answer do you want? You want the name of the coffee roast. This is not really asking that. These are conditionals that are asking, if you sold light roast coffee here, what would be the name of it? Or, if you sold light roast coffee here, what could be the name of it? Well, the name could be Yukon, but it could also be something else. So this is worse than this. It's less certain. But both of them are less certain than this, less clear. So I would prefer you to ask the question this way. Okay? It offers the most unambiguous, clear question, the most accurate way to ask the question. Okay, well, I hope that clears that up, Ryomi. And if it doesn't, we can talk about this further, perhaps another time. So I'm going to clear this away and, oops, try to catch up on some of the conversations that I've missed. Wow, lots. Okay, thank you guys. Great to have you with us and participating. So this question is it okay to use would buy instead of would have bought? So I believe that's referring to third conditional, right? Third conditional based on the condition if I had won $1 million in yesterday's lottery, right? I would buy a Ferrari, right? So that would be like taking the condition of third condition and mixing it with second condition, second result, right? Which points to the present. So the answer is yes, that's possible. And just think about it logically. If I'd won $1 million yesterday, well, maybe I would have bought a Ferrari yesterday, but I'd probably be still pretty busy with other things. It might have to wait a few days, but I'd still have the money. Even though I won the money in the past, I'd still have it in the present, hopefully. And so that means I would buy a Ferrari in the present. So the answer is yes, you can mix them that way, right? And that's the reality of conditionals. Second and third can mix because the result could be in the past. It can also be in the present. If reality reflects that, right? Good question. And I think this answers that question. How about mixed conditionals that have results in the present or possible past result? Yeah, if you have a condition in the past that's unreal, it leads to a condition in the present that's also unreal. Okay, so you can see the pattern here. They can mix as long as they're below the line of reality. Megumi says would. Facebook user says, thank you much for your beautiful explanation of conditions. Thank you very much. I don't know your name because if you watch in a Facebook group, it doesn't allow your name to appear. So I always recommend, although you can watch in a Facebook group, it's a little bit more interactive if you watch on my Facebook profile, Paul Duke, or Hard Boiled English, or over onto the YouTube channel. But thank you for watching. Could equals possibilities would equals include talker's will. Could does not include talker's will. It doesn't. Could only expresses ability. It doesn't include will. Would expresses will. What is will? Will is a strong desire, right? strong desire to do something, to make something happen. Could doesn't express that. Could only expresses your ability, right? Only. That's what it expresses. So if you told me, last week I could meet my friend, okay, so you had the ability. It doesn't tell me if you did or didn't, right? If you want to tell me what happened last week, you have to say, last week I met my friend. And if you met them, clearly you had the ability. So you don't need could. That's a common mistake. I've made an entire video about it, which I'll link at the end of this one. Would be able to, yeah, that's another good one. What do we have here? However, when people want to be more complicated, they prefer to use other conditionals and assumptions to express our idea. Well, I think it's not just wanting to be more complicated. Reality is complicated. And in order to express the relationship between a condition and a result, this happens in our real life. We need a grammar that specifically does that, right? If you only use simple present, you're only able to express these ones, real conditionals. You're not able to express the unreal conditionals. Well, guess what? That means you can't think that, perhaps. That means you can't communicate your hypothetical ideas that aren't real, but you can think them, right? Like, if I had $1 million, I would buy a Ferrari. I don't have $1 million, but I can imagine that situation. I can play a little movie in my mind. I'm able to do that. So if I'm able to do that and I want to share that vision or that dream with someone, I have to have a grammar that expresses it. This won't work. This expresses what's true. This expresses what's not true, what's not real. So we need both. So people want to be more complicated. Well, some people do, right? But that's not the goal. The goal is to communicate more accurately what you're thinking. That's a better goal. We have Grace with us. Welcome to the show, Grace. Thank you for joining us. We have Facebook user here. Can I share with my friends? Wow, please do. I don't know your name or where you're from, but thank you for watching, and please share with your friends. The more people watch, the better. Okay, this is a great question. Remember I said, guys, where did I say it? Okay, here. All variations of conditional expressions are rooted in the basic, are rooted in the 4 basic conditionals. I'm just going to clear the board. That includes wishes and hopes, right? Those are very common expressions they can be short, but they also are conditionals, right? Let me show you. This is why we have to understand the 4 basic conditionals, because they lead to a whole bunch of other expressions that express a conditional meaning, but in different and simpler ways. They're variations on the 4 basics. Okay? So, let me give you an example. Let me just clear that off. Okay. What do we hope for, right? I hope I will pass the test. Let's keep it really simple and clear. People might say, I hope I pass the test, right? I hope I pass the test. Well, that is a conditional. Doesn't look like it, but let me show you the meaning that's hiding inside that. Okay. What condition will lead to this result? That's a result. What's the condition that will lead to that? Well, you might think something like, if I study, I will pass the test. Right? Or if I don't study, I will not pass the test. This is a first conditional. So what are we saying here? In this condition, this will be the result. Now, I hope I pass the test means you want to pass the test. You want that to be the result. Well, that means you have to study, right? If I study, I will pass the test. Okay? So let's imagine that you did study. You have studied. You're ready. But you're still not sure, so you hope. That's when we can use the expression, I hope I pass the test. Or I hope I will pass the test if you're talking about a specific point in the future. I hope I will pass the test. I've studied, right? And you control something that you hope for. So use hope when you're talking about things that you can control, right? Like you can study and therefore pass the test. What do we wish for? Well, usually we wish for things that we don't have control over. Things that are impossible. Like, I wish I could fly, right? I wish I could fly like a penguin. Well, I guess penguins don't fly. I wish I could play Major League Baseball, right? But I'm an old man. I can't play professional baseball. But I sure wish. So use wish for things that are not possible, right? Not real. Second and third conditional, right? Second conditional. I wish I could or would fly. Right? I wish I could fly like a bird. Right? Do you think I can? No, this is imaginary. I need magic power like a Harry Potter magic stick to do that. So this is really expressing a larger idea of a second conditional. If I had wings, I could fly. Or I would fly. The difference is I would definitely fly. That would be my dream. I would want that to happen. I have an intention. Could just means I could fly. Or I could sit around Antarctica like the penguins and not fly. He's got wings, right? Could just means ability. Doesn't mean you're going to do it. It just means you would have the ability. If I had wings, I could or would fly. But guess what? I don't have wings. So I can't fly. This is unreal. So I wish for it. So we wish for things that are unreal. We hope for things that are real. That's how you use hope and wish. And yes, they are built from conditionals. As I said, all these things are built from conditionals. All these variations on conditionals come from the four conditionals. Yeah, if only I could fly. Okay. What else do we have here? I just want to say hello to everyone. I'm Huang from Vietnam. Let me see how I can reach your YouTube channel. Guys, you can go to the YouTube channel, The Grammar Detective. Hardboiled English Live is the name of the show now. The YouTube channel is called The Grammar Detective. Let me see if I can find some graphics for that. I don't have something like here. Right, so look for The Grammar Detective or hashtags. Hashtags are at Grammar Detective. Guys, we're almost out of time. So I want to say thank you to everyone. A whole bunch of people I didn't get a chance to say hi to, unfortunately. And again, this is one of the reasons I wanted to change the format of the show, because there's a lot to talk about on any given topic in order to really understand it. I believe I could fly. If I had wings. If I had magic powers. Right? Okay. Guys, I want to say thank you for joining me tonight. Oh, one more. It's been wonderful to see you again. I'm so happy to be live streaming again every week. Again, every Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, Pacific Standard Savings Time in the winter. Right now it's 6 p.m. on the West Coast, Vancouver time, or Los Angeles time, or San Diego time if you're there. Yeah. Oh, we have a good question here. What is the difference between going to and will? Both can be used to talk about the future tense, right? You can use them in conditionals, right? For first conditional, we talk about the future. If it rains tonight, I will wear a hat, or I am going to wear a hat. But they're not really related to the structure of conditionals. Perhaps we can talk about future tense on another show. That's a great topic. So guys, thank you for joining the show today. I am your grammar detective, Paul Duke. It's a pleasure to have you with me. It's a pleasure to be live streaming to you again. Yuki from 7 years ago. Wow. Great to see you, Yuki. I think your last name, your family name was Nagayanaki. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. Yuki Nagayanaki. Is that you, Yuki? I hope so. Hope I got it right and didn't destroy it. Well, guys, I'm your grammar detective, Paul Duke, thanking you for watching my live stream. If you missed a portion of the show, including the opening with the question, you can, of course, watch the recording on YouTube tomorrow. It will be posted entirely, and I'll also be posting some clips. Until the next time I see you guys, take care. Until we talk about the next English mystery on Hardboiled English Live. Okay? Take care, guys. Thanks for watching tonight's show. If you have an English grammar question, an English mystery, contact me on social media and send me a video of you asking the question. I'll investigate it on a future show. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button to get all the updates about videos and events. If you're feeling generous, you can also donate to the production costs of the show at Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. Finally, until the next time I see you on Hardboiled English Live, I want you to keep learning English. Stay healthy and stay cool.